He will invest in your growth like it's his personal mission, not because he wants to change you, not because he sees flaws to fix, but because he sees your potential like a fire already burning. And he refuses to stand by while you doubt your own light. Most people confuse love with possession. They think loving someone means keeping them close, keeping them safe, keeping them small. But real love doesn't shrink you to fit its comfort zone. Real love expands you. It pushes you toward your highest self, even when that means you might outgrow old versions of your life. And when a man truly loves you, he doesn't fear your evolution. He fuels it. He celebrates your dreams like they're his own. He listens when you talk about your goals, not with polite disinterest, but with genuine curiosity, with the kind of attention that makes you feel seen in a world that often looks past you. He remembers the small things, the book you mentioned wanting to read, the course you said you'd take, the job you whispered about at 2 a.m. when the world was quiet and your heart was brave. And then he does something about it. He buys you that book. He asks how the course is going. He reminds you of your strength when you start doubting yourself. He doesn't wait for you to fail so he can say, "I told you so." He stands beside you while you try, while you stumble, while you rise, because to him, your success isn't separate from his happiness. It's the core of it. He doesn't feel threatened by your ambition. He feels proud of it. He doesn't resent the time you need to grow. He protects it. He covers responsibilities so you can focus. He holds space when you're overwhelmed. He becomes your quiet foundation so you can reach higher. And when you finally take that leap, when you start that business, when you speak up, when you step into a room full of strangers and claim your voice, he's not surprised because he's been believing in you long before you believed in yourself. That's the power of a man who invests in your growth. He doesn't just love the woman you are, he loves the woman you're becoming, and he's determined to help her arrive. This kind of love is rare because it requires humility. It means putting your dreams on the same level as his own. It means sacrificing convenience, comfort, even control so you can fly. Most men can't do it. Their ego gets in the way. They feel small when you shine too bright. They worry that if you grow, you'll leave. But a man who truly loves you knows something deeper. That real love isn't about holding on, it's about holding space. And the more you grow, the more meaningful your connection becomes. He doesn't fear losing you to your purpose. He fears losing you to a life that doesn't let you live it. So he encourages you to stretch, to challenge, to break through. He doesn't silence your restlessness. He honors it. He knows that passion isn't always comfortable. Growth isn't always pretty. But he stays, he supports, he believes. And in that unwavering support, you begin to trust yourself. You stop asking for permission. You stop waiting for approval. You start moving, not because you have to prove anything, but because you finally feel safe enough to try. That safety changes everything. It turns fear into fuel. It turns doubt into determination. It turns dreams from distant wishes into real, tangible goals. And when you look back, you won't just remember what you achieved. You'll remember how he made you feel while you were becoming it. You'll remember the way he looked at you when you said, "I want to try something new," not with skepticism, but with a smile that said, "I've been waiting for you to say that." You'll remember the times he stayed up late listening to your ideas even when he was tired, the times he reminded you of your progress when you only saw failure, the times he defended your time, your energy, your focus, because he knew they were sacred. That kind of investment doesn't come from obligation. It comes from love that sees your soul's purpose and refuses to let it go unnoticed. And when you're loved like that, something awakens inside you. You stop playing small. You stop apologizing for wanting more. You start living with courage, not because you're fearless, but because you know you're not alone. You have someone who isn't just beside you, but behind you, cheering, believing, building a life that makes your dreams possible. That's not just love. That's partnership. That's legacy. And when a man invests in your growth, not because he needs to, but because he chooses to, every day in quiet and consistent ways, you'll know without a single doubt that you are deeply, completely, unshakably loved. He will face his fears for you, not because you asked, but because your love gave him the courage to become someone greater. Love doesn't just reveal who a man is, it reveals who he's capable of being. And when a man truly loves you, he stops running from the parts of himself he's been afraid to confront. He stops hiding behind silence, behind pride, behind the armor of "I'm fine." Because being with you has shown him that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's the deepest form of strength. He sees the way you open your heart even when it's terrifying. He watches you speak your truth even when your voice shakes. He notices how you keep going even when you're broken inside. And something in him shifts. He doesn't want to just love you, he wants to earn loving you. And that means no more excuses, no more avoidance. No more hiding behind the excuse that men don't talk about feelings or I've always dealt with things alone. He starts showing up differently. He starts saying the hard things. He admits when he's struggling. He asks for help. He apologizes when he's wrong, not to win an argument, but because he values your peace more than his ego. That doesn't happen by accident. That happens because your love created a safe space where he can finally be real. And in that safety, he finds the courage to grow. He goes to therapy. He confronts old wounds. He breaks generational patterns. He faces the pain he's been numbing for years because he doesn't want to pass it on. He doesn't want to repeat the cycles that damaged his parents' relationship, that left him disconnected, that taught him love means silence and distance. He wants something different. He wants something better. And he's willing to do the hard work because of you. Not for you, but because loving you has awakened a new version of himself. One who isn't afraid to feel. One who isn't afraid to change. One who isn't afraid to stay. Because real courage isn't about never being afraid. It's about being afraid and choosing love anyway. It's about sitting with discomfort instead of walking away. It's about staying present during conflict instead of shutting down. It's about admitting he doesn't have all the answers, but promising to keep trying. And when he does that, when he chooses emotional honesty over easy silence, when he faces his insecurities instead of projecting them onto you, when he works on himself without being forced, that's not just growth, that's devotion, that's love in action. Most women don't realize how rare this is. They think every man will naturally become emotionally available. But the truth is, most men aren't taught how to feel. They're taught to fix, to perform, to endure. They're not taught to connect. So when a man breaks that pattern, not perfectly, not overnight, but consistently, with effort, with humility, it's not small, it's monumental. It means he sees you not just as a partner, but as a reason to become whole. And that kind of transformation doesn't happen unless love runs deeper than fear. He's afraid of failing you, afraid of not being enough, afraid of losing you. But instead of letting that fear drive him away, he lets it drive him inward to do the work, to heal, to show up better. He learns to communicate. He learns to listen without preparing his defense. He learns to comfort instead of solve. He learns that sometimes you don't need him to fix anything. You just need him to be there fully, without distraction, without judgment. And he gives you that, not because it's easy, but because you're worth the effort. And in those moments, when he holds you while you cry, when he says, "I'm here," and means it, when he admits his mistakes and changes his behavior, he's not just loving you, he's rebuilding himself around the truth of what love really is. That's the kind of love that lasts, not the kind that's perfect from the start, but the kind that gets better because both people are willing to grow. And when you see him facing his fears, not for praise, not for reward, but because he refuses to let his past dictate your future, you'll feel it in your chest, a deep, quiet certainty. This man isn't just with you. He's choosing you every single day in the way that matters most by becoming someone who can truly love you, not just say he does. And when you're loved by someone who is brave enough to change, you'll find your own courage rising. You'll stop shrinking to avoid hard conversations. You'll stop fearing conflict. You'll start believing that love can be both safe and deep, that it can be a place where both of you are seen, healed, and transformed. That's not just a relationship. That's a sanctuary. And when a man faces his fears for you, not because he has to, but because he wants to, because he loves you too much to stay broken, you'll know without a single doubt that you are not just loved, you are chosen. And that changes everything. He will prioritize you, not in grand gestures, but in the quiet, everyday choices that reveal where his heart truly lies. Most women confuse attention with priority. They think love means constant texts, endless dates, or public displays. But real priority isn't loud. It's lived. It's the way he adjusts his schedule so he can be home for dinner, even when work runs late. It's the way he puts his phone down the moment you walk into the room, not because he has to, but because seeing you lights something up inside him that nothing else can touch. It's the way he remembers how you take your coffee, not because it matters to him, but because you matter, and every detail about you is sacred. When a man truly loves you, you don't compete for his time. You don't fight for his energy. You don't wonder if you're just one of many things on his list. You're the list. You're the filter through which he makes decisions. He doesn't just say you come first. He proves it silently, consistently, in ways so natural they almost go unnoticed, until you realize that his entire rhythm has shifted to include you, to honor you, to protect your place in his life. He doesn't need reminders. He doesn't wait for special occasions. He shows up on ordinary days, in ordinary moments, with extraordinary presence, because love to him isn't a performance, it's a practice. And the most powerful proof of love isn't what he does when you're upset or when things are hard. It's what he does when everything is fine. That's when real commitment shines. When there's no crisis, no drama, no reason to prove anything, just life unfolding in its quiet routine. And still he chooses you, again and again, in the way he saves the last bite of his dessert for you, in the way he texts to say thinking of you out of nowhere, in the way he holds your hand while watching TV, not for show, but because touching you feels as necessary as breathing. These aren't small things, they're everything, because consistency is the language of security. And when a man makes you a constant in his life, not a maybe, not a sometimes, but a yes, you begin to feel something rare, certainty. You stop questioning whether he cares, you stop analyzing his moods, you stop overthinking his silence, because his actions have already answered every doubt. He doesn't just love you when it's easy, he loves you when it's inconvenient, when he's tired, when he has 1,000 reasons to focus elsewhere, and still he turns toward you. That's not habit, that's choice, and every choice he makes in your favor is a brick in the foundation of a love that lasts. He plans his future with you in it, not as an afterthought, but as the centerpiece. He talks about next summer, about buying a home, about growing old, not with vague hope, but with quiet confidence, as if your life together is not a possibility, but a promise. He introduces you to people who matter to him, not to impress you, but because he sees you as permanent. He shares his dreams not to impress, but because he wants you beside him in them. And when life demands sacrifice, he doesn't hesitate. He gives up a promotion that would take him away from you. He skips a trip with friends because you're going through a hard time. He stays home when he could be out because being with you feels like peace. That's what real priority looks like. It's not measured in time, but in intention. It's not about how much he gives, but why he gives it. And when a man consistently places you at the center, not to please you, but because his heart naturally orbits around you, you'll feel a deep sense of belonging. You'll stop feeling like you have to earn your place. You'll stop walking on eggshells, afraid of losing him, because you'll know in your bones that you are not just loved, you are chosen every single day in the smallest, most meaningful ways. And that knowledge, it doesn't just heal your heart, it transforms your entire being. You stand taller. You speak with more confidence. You love more freely because you're no longer living in fear of loss. You're living in the fullness of love. And when a woman feels truly prioritized, not occasionally, not conditionally, but constantly, she doesn't just feel loved, she feels safe. And from that safety, she blooms. She becomes more generous, more patient, more alive. Because real love isn't just about being cherished, it's about being seen as essential. And when a man makes you his priority in action, not just words, you'll finally understand what it means to be home, not in a place, but in a person. And that, more than anything, is the proof you've been searching for. He will defend your worth, not with anger, not with confrontation, but with unwavering belief in who you are, especially when you forget. Because the deepest form of love isn't just about affection, it's about affirmation. It's about being the steady voice that reminds her again and again that she is enough, exactly as she is. Most women carry invisible wounds, the kind that don't bleed but ache, the kind shaped by years of being overlooked, underestimated, or made to feel too much, too emotional, too strong, too demanding. And in moments of doubt, when the old lies creep in, you're not good enough, you're hard to love, you'll end up alone. A man who truly loves you doesn't wait for you to ask for reassurance. He sees the shadow in your eyes, the slight hesitation in your voice, and he steps in. Not to fix you, not to tell you to cheer up, but to stand beside you and say, without hesitation, you are incredible. You are worthy. You are loved. And he says it like it's an unshakable truth, not just a comforting phrase, because to him, it is truth. He doesn't just accept your flaws, he reframes them. He sees your sensitivity not as weakness, but as depth. He sees your passion not as intensity, but as power. He sees your quiet moments not as distance, but as wisdom. And when others misunderstand you, when they judge you too quickly or dismiss your feelings, he doesn't stay silent. He doesn't laugh it off. He protects your dignity, not by fighting for you, but by believing in you, loudly and clearly. He corrects someone who speaks down to you. He validates your feelings when others call you too emotional. He reminds you of your strength when you feel broken. And he does it without making it a scene, without drama, because his loyalty isn't performative, it's permanent. That kind of defense doesn't come from obligation. It comes from reverence. From a man who looks at you and doesn't just see a partner, he sees a force. A woman of courage, of resilience, of rare beauty that has nothing to do with appearance and everything to do with spirit. And he refuses to let the world dim that light. He won't allow you to shrink. He won't let you apologize for taking up space. When you downplay your achievements, he names them. When you say, "I'm not sure I can do this," he says, "Yes, you can. I've seen you do harder." He becomes the living proof that you are not alone in your belief in yourself. And over time, something shifts inside you. You start to internalize his certainty. You begin to trust your own voice again. You stop seeking validation from people who don't matter, because you already have it from the man who looks at you like you're his greatest discovery. This isn't about dependency, it's about partnership. It's about having someone who reflects back the truth when you can't see it yourself. Because every woman, no matter how strong, has moments when she stumbles, when the weight of life makes her question her value. And in those moments, a man who truly loves her doesn't offer empty praise. He offers presence. He sits with her in the dark. He holds her without trying to fix it. He reminds her of who she's been, who she is, and who she's becoming. And slowly she remembers. Not because he convinced her, but because his love created a space where she could find her way back to herself. That's the power of a man who defends your worth. He doesn't just love you when you're shining. He loves you when you're hidden, when you're unsure, when you're healing. And in that love, you find the courage to rise again. He doesn't need you to be perfect. He doesn't expect you to have it all together. He loves the real you, the one with scars, with fears, with dreams that haven't come true yet. And because he does, you start to love that version of yourself too. You stop hiding, you stop pretending, you stop performing. You begin to live from authenticity, not fear. And that authenticity, that's where true connection grows, not in perfection, but in honesty, not in image, but in integrity. And when a man stands by your side, not in spite of your struggles, but because of the strength he sees in them, you realize something profound. You are not a burden. You are not too much. You are not difficult to love. You are deeply, completely, unconditionally worthy, just as you are. And when you finally believe that, not just in your mind, but in your bones, your entire life changes. You stop settling for relationships that drain you. You stop accepting treatment that diminishes you. You walk away from anything that doesn't honor your worth because you've tasted what real love feels like. And you'll never again confuse silence with care or distance with strength. You know now that true love speaks. It affirms. It uplifts. It defends. And when a man consistently reminds you of your value, not because you need it, but because he can imagine a world where you doubt it, you'll know beyond all doubt that you are not just loved, you are cherished. And that changes everything. He will stay, even when it's hard, even when silence would be easier, even when walking away would require less courage. Because real love isn't measured by the moments of joy, but by the choices made in the dark, when the spark feels distant, when misunderstandings pile up, when life weighs heavy and connection feels out of reach. That's when love is truly tested. And a man who really loves you doesn't disappear when things get complicated. He doesn't shut down. He doesn't punish you with distance or coldness. He leans in. He stays present. He chooses you. Not once, not on a good day, but again and again, especially when every part of him wants to retreat. Most relationships don't fail because of lack of passion. They fail because of lack of perseverance. Because when the initial excitement fades, when real life sets in with its bills, its stress, its unmet expectations, many men run, not physically, but emotionally. They disengage. They become distant. They hide behind work, distractions, or indifference. But a man who truly loves you, he doesn't use silence as a weapon. He doesn't abandon you in the middle of a storm just because he doesn't know how to fix it. He stays. He sits with the discomfort. He faces the tension, not to win, but to heal. He speaks up even when his voice shakes. He reaches for your hand even when you've both said things that hurt. He doesn't wait for you to make the first move. He doesn't demand that you apologize first. He takes the risk because your connection matters more than his pride. That kind of loyalty isn't common. It's not natural, it's chosen. And every time he chooses to stay, to talk, to listen, to repair, he proves that you are not just a chapter in his life. You are the foundation of it. He knows love isn't a feeling that lasts forever. It's a decision made every single day, and he makes it quietly, consistently, without needing praise. He shows up after arguments. He initiates reconciliation. He admits when he's wrong, not because you forced him, but because he values peace over being right. He remembers the promises he made, not just the spoken ones, but the silent ones. To protect your heart, to honor your trust, to build something lasting. And when life throws its hardest punches, when grief hits, when illness strikes, when dreams collapse, he doesn't look for an exit. He becomes your anchor. He holds you when you can't hold yourself. He speaks hope when you can't find words. He carries the weight so you don't have to carry it alone. That's not obligation. That's love in its purest form. The kind that doesn't calculate cost. The kind that gives without keeping score. The kind that says, I see how hard this is for you, and I'm not going anywhere. And when you're loved like that, something inside you begins to heal. You stop bracing for abandonment. You stop expecting the worst. You start believing that love can be safe even in the storm because you've seen it, you've felt it, you've lived it. And that experience changes your entire relationship with love. You no longer confuse intensity with depth. You no longer mistake passion for permanence. You know now that the deepest love isn't loud, it's steady, it's not flashy, it's faithful. It doesn't need to prove itself to the world. It only needs to be real between the two of you. And when a man stays, not out of fear, not out of habit, but out of deep, unwavering commitment, you begin to trust in a way you never could before. You start to believe that you're worth fighting for, that your love is worth protecting, that your heart is worth staying for. And that belief, it doesn't just transform your relationship, it transforms you. You become more patient, more forgiving, more courageous in love. Because you've learned that real connection isn't about perfection. It's about showing up again and again, even when it's hard. And when you're with someone who does the same, who meets you in the mess and still chooses you, you realize that love isn't about finding the right person. It's about building something real with the person who refuses to let go. That's the kind of man who loves you, not with words, but with endurance, not with promises, but with presence, not with grand exits, but with quiet daily returns. And when you finally recognize that kind of love, that kind of man, you won't need to question your worth, your place, or your future, because the answer is already written in every choice he's made to stay. You are not a backup plan. You are not temporary. You are not replaceable. You are the one he fights for, the one he comes back to, the one he builds a life with. And in that truth, you find peace. Not the kind that comes from perfection, but the kind that comes from knowing deep in your soul that you are loved not just when it's easy, but precisely when it's hard. And that is the greatest proof of all. You will begin to trust yourself, not because everything suddenly became perfect, but because love finally stopped feeling like a gamble. For so long, you questioned. You analyzed every word, every silence, every look. You twisted yourself into knots trying to figure out if he really meant it, if he truly saw you, if he would stay. You gave your energy, your time, your heart, only to wonder if it was ever truly received. But now something is different. The doubt doesn't scream as loud. The fear doesn't grip as tight because his actions have spoken louder than any promise ever could. And slowly, quietly, you begin to believe, not just in him, but in you, in your instincts, in your worth, in your right to peace. That shift doesn't happen overnight. It grows from the soil of consistency, from the 1,000 small moments where he showed up when others would have walked away, from the times he chose kindness over anger, presence over escape, repair over resentment. And as those moments pile up, they form a foundation so solid that your soul finally stops bracing for collapse. You stop waiting for the other shoe to drop. You stop preparing for loss before it even arrives, because real love isn't a countdown to heartbreak. It's a daily choice to build something lasting. And when you're on the receiving end of that kind of commitment, something inside you wakes up. You realize you don't have to earn love by shrinking, by pleasing, by silencing your needs. You can simply be and still be cherished. That freedom changes everything. You start speaking your truth without apology. You set boundaries without guilt. You ask for what you need without fear of rejection because you've learned what real love feels like. And it doesn't punish honesty. It rewards it. It doesn't punish growth. It celebrates it. It doesn't punish emotion. It holds space for it. And in that safety, you rediscover parts of yourself that had been buried under years of compromise. You remember your voice, your fire, your dreams. You stop asking, "Am I too much?" and start living as if the answer is already no, because the man who loves you doesn't see you as too intense, too sensitive, too strong. He sees you as alive, and he wouldn't have you any other way. That kind of acceptance isn't given lightly. It's earned through courage, through vulnerability, through the daily decision to love someone deeply, even when it's not easy. And when you finally receive it, you don't just feel loved, you feel liberated. You stop measuring your worth by how much you give and start measuring it by how much you honor yourself. You stop staying in relationships out of fear and start walking away from anything that dims your light. Because you now know what real love looks like. It doesn't make you beg. It doesn't make you doubt. It doesn't make you small. It makes you brave. It makes you whole. It makes you free. And once you've tasted that freedom, you'll never again settle for anything less. You won't tolerate silence when you need words. You won't accept absence when you need presence. You won't confuse attention with love, or intensity with depth, or convenience with commitment. You know now that real love is steady, it's kind, it's brave, it shows up, it stays, it protects, it invests, it defends, it prioritizes, it endures. And when a man does all of that, not perfectly, but consistently, not occasionally, but daily, you won't need anyone to tell you that you're loved. You'll feel it in your bones. You'll see it in the way he looks at you when you're not watching. You'll hear it in the way he says your name like it matters. You'll know it in the quiet certainty that you are not just part of his life, you are central to it. And from that place of knowing, you begin to live differently. You walk taller, you love deeper, you dream bigger, because you're no longer operating from lack. You're operating from fullness, from security, from truth. And that changes not just your relationship, but your entire life. You attract better connections. You demand better treatment. You become a version of yourself that doesn't need validation because you already feel worthy. That's the ultimate gift of being truly loved. It doesn't just change how you're seen, it changes how you see yourself. And when you finally look in the mirror and believe without hesitation that you are enough, that you are deserving, that you are deeply, completely loved, you'll realize that the greatest transformation wasn't in him. It was in you. Because real love doesn't just find you, it frees you. And now you are free. Not because everything is perfect, but because you are finally at peace with what love really is. And that peace, that clarity, that unshakable knowing, that's where true power begins. You will begin to live from wholeness, not hunger. Not chasing love like it's a missing piece, but standing in the truth that you were never broken to begin with. For years, you may have believed that love was something you had to earn. That if you were just kinder, quieter, more patient, more accommodating, he would finally see you, finally stay, finally choose you. But now something has shifted. You no longer approach love from a place of lack. You approach it from a place of knowing that you are complete, knowing that your value isn't determined by his attention, his words, his presence, knowing that you are worthy, fully, deeply, unconditionally, whether he stays or walks away. And that knowing changes everything. Because when you stop begging for proof, you start recognizing it. When you stop trying to fix him, you start seeing him clearly. When you stop twisting yourself into shapes to fit his comfort, you start living in your own truth. And in that truth, love stops being a test you have to pass and becomes a gift you're ready to receive. That doesn't mean you stop caring. It doesn't mean you become cold or detached. It means you love from strength, not fear. You give because you have overflow. Not because you're trying to buy security. You stay because you want to, not because you're afraid to leave. You speak up because your voice matters, not because you're desperate to be heard. And when a man truly loves you, he doesn't just witness this transformation, he honors it. He doesn't try to pull you back into old patterns of doubt or dependency. He celebrates your independence. He respects your boundaries. He doesn't feel threatened by your strength. He feels proud of it because he doesn't love you to complete himself. He loves you because your wholeness inspires his own. That's the difference between love that consumes and love that elevates. One drains you, the other fills you. One makes you smaller, the other helps you grow. And when you finally experience love that doesn't demand sacrifice but encourages self-respect, you realize you've been starving for this your whole life. Not for a man, but for a love that lets you breathe. A love that doesn't require you to silence your needs, hide your pain, or dim your light. A love that says, I want all of you, not just the easy parts, but the real ones. And when you're loved like that, you stop hiding, you stop performing, you stop asking, do I matter? And start living as if the answer has always been yes. That's when true freedom begins. You start making choices from clarity, not fear. You walk away from situations that no longer serve you. You say no without guilt. You ask for what you need without shame. Because you've learned that love shouldn't cost you yourself. It should deepen it. It should protect it. It should reflect it back to you until you can see yourself clearly. And when a man does that, when he reflects your worth so consistently that you can't help but believe it, you stop looking for love in all the wrong places. You stop mistaking attention for care. You stop confusing intensity for depth. You stop believing that love has to hurt to be real. You understand now that the deepest connections aren't loud. They're quiet. They're safe. They're steady. They don't leave you anxious. They leave you at peace. And peace isn't the absence of conflict. It's the presence of trust. It's knowing that even when things get hard, he won't disappear. He won't punish you with silence. He won't make you fight for his attention. He'll stay. He'll listen. He'll repair. Because his love isn't conditional on your performance. It's rooted in commitment, in choice, in honor. And when you finally rest in that truth, something inside you settles. The constant hum of anxiety fades. The need to control, to predict, to manage his emotions, it all begins to dissolve. Because you're no longer trying to hold a relationship together with your bare hands. You're sharing the weight. You're building something real, side by side. And that shared strength, that mutual respect, that deep, quiet knowing that you're both in it for the long run, that's where real intimacy lives, not in grand gestures, not in perfect moments, but in the daily decision to show up, to care, to stay. And when you're loved by someone who makes that choice every single day, you don't just feel secure, you become secure. Not because he makes you feel safe, but because you finally stopped doubting what safety feels like. You know it now, you recognize it, you trust it. And from that place of inner stability, you become someone even greater. You love more freely, you forgive more easily, you lead with courage, not fear. Because you've learned that the most powerful love isn't the one that finds you, it's the one that frees you to become who you were always meant to be, and now you are free. Not because of him, but because of what his love helped you remember, that you were never lacking, you were always enough. And now you live like it. You will stop waiting for permission to feel safe. Because love should never be a negotiation where you earn peace through silence, sacrifice, or self-erasure. You were never meant to beg for stability, to twist your truth into something palatable, to shrink your needs just to keep someone close. And now, after everything, the doubts, the questions, the nights spent analyzing his words, the mornings waking up wondering if you were enough, you finally understand real love doesn't make you ask for safety. It gives it. Quietly, consistently, without condition. It doesn't say, if you change, then I'll stay. It says, I'm here, you're safe, always. And when you're loved like that, you stop holding your breath, you stop bracing for loss, you stop preparing for the moment he'll leave, because his presence isn't a maybe, it's a promise, lived out in the way he shows up, not just on good days, but on hard ones, on quiet ones. On days when love feels invisible, but his actions speak louder than any declaration ever could. That's when you realize you don't need to earn his loyalty. You don't need to perform to keep his affection. You don't need to silence your pain to protect his comfort, because a man who truly loves you doesn't fear your truth. He welcomes it. He doesn't run from your complexity. He stays for it. He sees your struggles not as burdens, but as invitations to love you deeper. And in that space where you can be raw, uncertain, imperfect, and still be held with tenderness, you finally exhale. The weight you've carried for years begins to dissolve. Not because life suddenly became easy, but because love no longer feels like a threat. It feels like home. And home isn't a place. It's a feeling, the feeling of being known, seen, and chosen, exactly as you are. No masks, no games, no fear of rejection if you speak your mind. That kind of safety doesn't come from perfection. It comes from integrity, from a man who values honesty over harmony, connection over control, depth over distance. He doesn't avoid hard conversations. He leans into them. He doesn't shut down when emotions rise. He stays present. He doesn't punish you for needing reassurance. He offers it freely because he understands that love isn't about winning. It's about healing. It's about building something so solid that both of you can rest in it. And when you're loved by someone who creates that kind of foundation, you stop questioning your worth. You stop wondering if you're too much. You stop apologizing for having needs, because needs aren't weaknesses. They're human. And a man who truly loves you doesn't resent them. He honors them. He remembers how you like your mornings. He notices when you're overwhelmed. He adjusts his behavior not because you demanded it, but because he sees you, and he refuses to ignore what he sees. That kind of attention isn't forced. It's natural. It flows from a heart that has decided deep down that your well-being matters as much as his own. And when you're on the receiving end of that kind of care, something shifts inside you. You begin to trust not just him, but life itself. You stop expecting betrayal. You stop assuming the worst. You start believing that good things can last, that love can be kind, that peace is not a fantasy, but a possibility. And that possibility becomes your new reality. You stop living in survival mode. You start living from calm. You make decisions from clarity, not fear. You set boundaries without guilt. You speak your truth without hesitation, because you've finally learned what love should feel like, and it doesn't leave you drained, it leaves you strengthened. It doesn't make you smaller, it makes you freer. And in that freedom, you become someone new, not because he changed you, but because he created the space for you to return to yourself, to the woman who doesn't need to prove anything, the woman who knows her worth without asking, the woman who loves deeply but never loses herself. That woman has always been inside you, but she couldn't breathe under the weight of doubt, of conditional affection, of relationships that demanded too much and gave too little. Now she can. She stands tall. She speaks with confidence. She loves with open hands, not clenched fists, because she knows deep in her bones that she is not just loved. She is secure, and security isn't given. It's earned, not by her through endless effort, but by him through consistent action. Through showing, you will begin to move through life with quiet confidence, not because everything is perfect, but because you finally know the difference between love that performs and love that endures. There was a time when you looked for reassurance in words, when a simple "I love you" could lift you up and silence could crush you. You used to measure his affection by how often he texted, how quickly he replied, how many compliments he gave. But now something has changed. You no longer need constant validation. You no longer panic when he's quiet. You don't interpret space as rejection or stillness as disinterest, because you've learned to see love not in what he says, but in what he does, in the way his actions never contradict his words, in the way his presence remains steady even when life gets loud. That kind of consistency doesn't shout. It whispers. It lives in the way he remembers your favorite song and plays it when you're tired, in the way he warms your side of the bed before you get in the way he defends your boundaries even when you're not in the room, in the way he shows up for your family, not because he has to, but because he sees them as his own. These aren't small things. They are the quiet architecture of a love that lasts. And when you're on the receiving end of that kind of devotion, you stop questioning your place. You stop wondering if you're truly important. You stop living in the fear of being replaceable. Because replaceable people don't get this kind of care. Replaceable people don't get this kind of loyalty. You are not a placeholder. You are not temporary. You are not one option among many. You are the choice he makes again and again, even when it's hard, even when it's inconvenient, even when no one is watching. And that truth, that deep, unshakable knowing, changes the way you carry yourself. You walk differently. You speak differently. You love differently, not with desperation, but with dignity. Not with neediness, but with strength, because you've finally learned that real love doesn't make you beg for attention. It makes you feel so secure that you don't need to. You no longer have to prove your worth. You no longer have to earn your place. You are already home. And when a woman lives from that place of certainty, she becomes untouchable in the best way, not cold, not distant, but unshakable. She doesn't fall apart when he's busy. She doesn't spiral when he's distracted. She trusts the foundation they've built. She knows that love isn't always loud. Sometimes it's sitting in silence, hand in hand, saying nothing because nothing needs to be said. Sometimes it's him taking the late shift so you can rest. Sometimes it's him calling your mom to check on her when he knows you're worried. These moments don't make headlines, but they build a lifetime. And when you start recognizing them, not as exceptions, but as the norm, you begin to see love for what it really is, a daily act of courage, of sacrifice, of quiet commitment. It's not about grand gestures. It's about showing up day after day without fanfare, without expectation of praise.